Hey folks, welcome back to the My Tech Decisions podcast. Today is another Patch Tuesday episode featuring Dustin Childs of Zero Day Initiative. It's a pretty light June security release from Microsoft, with only 6 bugs named in this patch release, but there are still a handful of dangerous vulnerabilities that admins should prioritize. Chief among them is a vulnerability discovered last month named Felina, a remote code execution bug in Microsoft Support diagnostic tool that was being actively exploited. Before we talk to Dustin about Felina and other June security patches, be sure to subscribe to the My Tech Decisions podcast on iTunes, Google, and Spotify to hear weekly interviews with IT experts that can help you make the best decisions for your organization. And now, here's Dustin. All right, Dustin, thanks for hopping on again as always. So let's talk about the June 22 Patch Tuesday.
Absolutely.
So let's start with Felina. Microsoft finally patches it after that bug was disclosed last month, and it's obviously one to prioritize since it was being actively attacked. Can you talk a little bit about why it's so dangerous and why it should be prioritized?
Well, it's very dangerous, first of all, because like you said, it's under active attack. It's anything that's under active attack, you should prioritize. But really, this one you should prioritize too, just because it's a very realistic attack scenario. I mean, it's not anything that's really extravagant or really extraordinary to trick a user into opening a document, which is essentially what Felina is, and then getting code execution. So it's a very typical thing that we see with business email compromise, with phishing attacks, with all sorts of things, where an attacker will send a specially crafted document, and they'll label it something that's so tempting to open, like executive compensation or whatever. And once that opens, code execution occurs, and then they're able to take over your system. So that attack scenario is really, really common, and it's very reliable exploits. So that's why we're very glad to see that Microsoft actually did patch it. It's a little hard to find in their security update guide, but an update is available. So definitely test and deploy that one quickly.
Right. Yeah, I've seen some other cybersecurity companies, release their own write-up of Patch Tuesday, and a couple of them just straight up missed this one. Why?
Yeah, so it's a nuance of the way Microsoft lists their security updates. Because they actually published the CVE in May, this update was listed as a May update. So if you only looked for the June updates, you didn't see it. You had to manually go to, which is what I did. I had to manually look at the CVE to see if it was updated. Once I went there, I saw it was updated. But looking at their update guide, which shows the monthly patches, it's not easily available right there. Right.
Makes sense. So another NFS bug, you write that it's similar to one patch last month. So is it a case of a failed patch or just a new vector altogether?
Yeah, we haven't had a time to really dig into this, but it's certainly looking like a failed patch. Last month, they were saying it affected NFS versions 2 and 3, and NFS 4.1 was unaffected. This month, they're saying NFS 4.1 is affected and versions 2 and 3 aren't affected. So it seems like that based on that alone, I would say this is likely some sort of a failed patch or another loose variant that didn't get caught last month. So we blogged about this bug a few weeks ago, and we're going to definitely take a deeper look at this because it is CVSS 9.8. It's a very dangerous bug for people who use NFS. So we're definitely looking to see what are the details of that. Because we already have a working proof of concept of last month's bug. So I'm sure we'll get POC for this month's bug too.
Yeah. There's a couple other bugs you highlighted, including Hyper-V. Can you talk about that one?
Sure. The Hyper-V bug is always interesting when I see an RCE like that, because remote code execution in Hyper-V is a little bit different. But really what that means is someone on a guest operating system can execute code on the underlying host operating system. So that guest to host escape is always really interesting to me because we rely on virtualization so much these days. We rely on multi-tenancy. We have multiple guest OSs on a single host OS. So if one of those guests can take over the host and then impact the other guest might not even know that they were being attacked until it's too late.
Right. And the last one you highlight is the desired state configuration information disclosure bug.
Yeah, this one is definitely a little bit more esoteric, but I know DSC is a PowerShell tool that a lot of admins use to help, provision their enterprise and take care of the systems. And it's an information disclosure bug that allows attackers to pull out usernames and passwords from logs. So if you get access to a system that one of those logs is, you might be able to find out the username and passwords for everything else in the domain. And like I said, I know this is a tool that gets used a lot by sysadmins to help them manage and maintain their networks. So that's why it's like, you know what, this is pretty interesting. And it sounds like the sort of thing that attackers would really latch onto. Once they had a foothold in an enterprise, they could definitely use this for lateral movement and to really take over everything.
And so no prince pooler bugs for the first time in however many months. So are we done with those, or is this just a temporary reprieve here?
I guess we'll find out next month. Hopefully we're done with the vast majority of them. Hopefully we do get a couple months off at least for everything to kind of settle down on that attack surface. But yeah, it was interesting to see no prince pooler attacks, no prince pooler exploits this month. And we'll see what happens in July. Historically speaking, July tends to be a very large month. So we'll see volume and, what's going on next month. And we had LDAP for the last 2 months too. So we'll see if that continues into July.
Right. So are you pouring one out for Internet Explorer today?
I am pouring one out and then freezing and then restarting. Yes, for IE. But it was introduced in 1995 and had an incredible run. I mean, no matter what you think of a web browser, anything that's lasted that long, we should, at least acknowledge that was a pretty relevant piece of software for a long time, and definitely a pretty important piece of software for the history of computing. Although I don't think there's anyone who's really sorry to see it go away.
Yeah, just clogging up space on everyone's hard drive. Anything else that we need to know about this month's Patch Tuesday, or maybe if you could talk about the two SharePoint bugs that seem to be getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, the SharePoint bugs are interesting. We've had quite a few of those come through our program too. And a lot of times people will look at them and go, well, authentication is required. They're not that important. But the authentication required is just what you need as a default user. So if you're a default user on a SharePoint site, you have all the permissions needed to take these actions and exploit the SharePoint server. So any authenticated user on a SharePoint site can exploit these bugs and take over the full server. And there's nuances between the two different bugs and which one's more exploitable, which one's less. But they both definitely can be exploited, and they both can be used to take over an entire SharePoint server. So that's definitely worth something. If you run SharePoint, make sure you install those. Don't look at the authentication and go, oh, okay, well, this is not important, because it definitely is. And we definitely have seen more SharePoint bugs come through the program recently too.
Great. All right, Dustin, thanks very much. I appreciate it.
No problem, Zach. Thanks for having me.